Welcome to the next episode of Evangelion Neon Genesis, where today we will be talking about episode 5. Now the first part is called Ray Beyond Her Heart.
And this episode is kind of more fleshing out of the Ray character. We get to see why she was kind of mangled at the beginning of episode 1. As we go through her backstory and we get to flesh out a little bit of her relationship with Gendo. Now the first part goes through the Unit 0 activation sequence, what happened with it. There's a very significant part of it where you see Gendo getting his hand burned, and that will play a bigger part, much like a lot of things that this show throws at you, that will come into importance later on, and I bet you don't even remember what I'm talking about. Adam.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later though. So we see what happens to Unit 0, why it's not working, and we also get a little thing, once again, going back into the theme of grounding it more, because we get to see Shinji more at school. You know, he's obviously has some type of emotional relationship to Rei Ayanami, one of the heroines in the show. We get a nice little treat with Kensuke and Toji, where they make fun of Shinji for staring at Rei in a bathing suit. Boys will be boys. We also get a lot of, and this is something I didn't realize it until I just thought about it, but we get something about Ritsuko's character where she's a lot of the expositionary person. She's the person who's either telling someone what happened, explaining things to people, or just flat out, you know, connecting things together. She's actually a very important person in this show, and I didn't even really think about it until now. Because think about it, she's either dishing out exposition, explaining things to other characters and the audience, and
yeah, that actually makes sense.
And her role gets bigger as we go along, as she actually becomes a fully formed character, which is, we won't get into what she became in the movies, but we won't get into that now, we'll get into that later. We also end it with a dinner scene between Shinji, Masato,
And Ritsuko.
Go ahead, you can explain it.
Misato's cooking is terrible, so terrible that she even killed her own bird.
Pen. No, he didn't die, but he should have.
He should have, yes.
It was a nice, it's one of those brief moments that of comedy we get in this show. And I shouldn't say brief, because this show does have a lot of comical elements in it. It's just, it's so overburdened with a lot of other stuff. But that was more or less the first part of the show. So we'll get into part 2.
Ray 1.
Ray 1 is the Unit 0 is being tested after being in isolation after what happened at the beginning of the first part of the show, and basically it's being tested. You're also seeing Shinji being kind of interested in why his dad has a relationship with Ray, and this is actually one of the few times in the show, and I don't think they meant it to be, but it's one of the few times in the show where you actually see Ray smiling. And the end of the first part, Ritsuko gives Shinji a key card to go give to Ray. And we probably get one of the, it's hard to say what is more than the other, but one of the more iconic scenes in this show, the scene where Shinji goes into Ray's apartment. Go ahead. Alright, I'll do it. he goes into her apartment and he sees where she lives, which is a place filled with filth. Blood is all over the place, bandages are all over the place, and he sees her without clothes. We get somewhere between a comical scene and a completely awkward scene, which will be made more awkward later on when we find out what's going on in Deuce's story. But, much like Star Wars, we'll get there when we get there. So it has that scene. We see the activation of Unit 0 again. And this show kind of ends with the beginning of the coming of the fifth angel and the fact that Shinji gets attacked.
Yep, right when he appears. That's it. It ends off there.
Yeah. Is this as good as the other episodes? Yeah. It's suiting a need. It's filling in story, and it's building. This show continues to do world building, and there's a lot of tiny little setups you won't recognize unless you pay attention, like the whole thing with the hand that you didn't get until now, even though you've been watching this show for 8 years. There's stuff I still don't get about this show that I'm still learning now, and I've been watching this show since 2000. So, the episode ends with the introduction of the fifth angel, him attacking, Shinji's in peril. How are we going to get out of it? Let's find out in episode 6. Anything you want to say?
No. Ugh.
You crack me up a little, buddy.
Peace.